And we're back with another episode of Before You Buy, the show where we give you some straight up gameplay and our first impressions of the latest games releasing. Hi folks, it is Falcon. I'm here to talk to you today about the Ninja Gaiden Master Collection. I was pretty excited for this one, if I'm completely honest. I love Ninja Gaiden. These are games that are just fun as hell. Like the current iteration of Ninja Gaiden, I guess. Came out back in 2004. It was awesome. Action was intense. The graphics were like incredible for the time, and it felt really good to play. Even after all this time, it remains one of my favorite action games, kind of only held back by a little bit of dated camera controls and some annoying sections that you kind of have to force yourself to get through. So with the Master Collection, Tecmo is bringing back the original classic along with its 2 sequels, but is it worth the $40 asking price? Well, after spending some time with it, the best I can say is that it's complicated. Not a simple yes or no, so let's get into it. Here's the most important thing you need to know about this collection. These might not be the exact games you remember. Like, we're not getting Ninja Gaiden Black, the updated release of the original game that included a ton of quality life features and improvements on the already great original. We're getting Ninja Gaiden Sigma, the significantly reworked PS3 port that made a number of changes to the game that are contentious at best with fans of the series. The Ninja Gaiden 2 that comes with the collection is also the PS3 version, called Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, and that version was also controversial. Third and final game, Ninja Gaiden 3, is the Razor's Edge version of the game, which is kind of universally considered to be the best version of it, but it's still Ninja Gaiden 3, so it's not the best. So, I mean, this all in mind right from the get-go, it's kind of a compromised package. To a lot of fans, Ninja Gaiden Black is the definitive game in the series, and Ninja Gaiden 2, the original version on the 360, is better than Sigma 2. The Sigma games do have their fans, and I don't personally hate them or anything, but I will be honest, I do prefer the originals in Black, and spending some time with the Master Collection, it makes me more certain of that opinion. Getting that out of the way, we know Team Ninja has come out and said the reason Ninja Gaiden Black and Ninja Gaiden 2 aren't included in their original versions because the original code for those games was apparently lost, so trying to remaster them would be a lot harder, so I mean, it's understandable, but it still kind of stings. Before I start getting too negative, though, I'll stop and say that Ninja Gaiden and Ninja Gaiden 2 are both really good games, and having slightly inferior versions of them doesn't turn them into bad games. We're still talking about remasters of some pretty amazing games here. But if you're new to the whole series, that wouldn't be too much of a surprise. The newest one is still over 8 years old. Here is a rundown, though. In Ninja Gaiden, you play as Ryu Hayabusa, a member of the Dragon Clan and protector of the Holy Dragon Sword. There is a story, but it barely matters. They're kind of just excuses to go around and fight cool bosses, and that's fine. I don't care. What these games are really about is exploring the environment, fighting tons of enemies, doing some light platforming and solving some simple puzzles, and then fighting more enemies. The first game has a little bit of a Resident Evil structure where there's an interconnected world once you get past the prologue. It's a linear experience, but it does feel a little more open, and it's cool to see places you've been from a different angle. Along the way, you can buy items and weapon upgrades from Muramasa using yellow essence, which is the currency in these games. Out of all of them, I think the first game has the best loop. It never feels like you're doing one thing or fighting one kind of enemy for too long. Always feels fresh. But in comparison, the more level-based Ninja Gaiden 2 opens up the arenas for bigger, more chaotic battles. That said, it makes the environments a little more bland and empty looking in comparison to places you go in the first game. The original Ninja Gaiden is just so silky smooth to play. Combat's incredibly fast and deadly. And if you want to get through a lot of the encounters, you gotta go hard because death comes fast. The bosses are big highlights. They're tough, technical brawls. They really do put your skills to the test, and there are a lot of them. A big part of what makes Ninja Gaiden so good is how much variety there is, though. You get a good selection of weapons, varied environments, tons of different enemies, bosses, and sub-bosses to fight. Like, you're pretty much always dealing with something new, so it doesn't really get stale, even if there are some frustrating and or unfair moments. Now, Ninja Gaiden 2 is a little more complicated. The levels are a lot more linear and less dense, there's fewer puzzles to break up the gameplay, and there are some really annoying enemies in this game. Also, some of the bosses are kind of duds. In general, it doesn't feel quite as polished as the first. It's still a good game, but I don't know that it lives up to the original, at least for me. And then there's Ninja Gaiden 3. It's the black sheep of the series for a reason. It's not that good. It's incredibly linear in a series where you did feel at least vaguely free in the first two titles. And a lot of the times, it just feels like you're jumping from cutscene to arena to cutscene, which wouldn't be so bad if the story was not boring as hell. Like the awesome variety of monsters from the previous games, it's not there. You're fighting basic human enemies for a big chunk of the game, and the bosses are pretty basic and force you to wait around for an opening instead of just allowing you to play aggressively. Worst of all, the tight control of the first two games isn't here. It just doesn't feel as tight and responsive as the old games. I'm glad they included it. The collection would feel incomplete without it, but even with the improvements they've made with Razor's Edge, it is a mediocre game at best. And another major focus on Ninja Gaiden 3 was for some reason competitive multiplayer. That's been removed for the Master Collection, like Mass Effect 3's multiplayer. But in this case, I feel like you're not going to care. It's not good. It wasn't a good mode then. There's no reason for it to exist. So it's a collection of games with one absolute classic, one pretty good game, and one not so great game, with the good ones arguably being worse versions of themselves. The Sigma versions are contentious because they do add things to the games, but they also take stuff out of the games. Like certain bosses, puzzles, and entire sections of the games have been reworked or removed. Sigma 1 made Ninja Gaiden more linear and removed some of the puzzles that broke up the gameplay. It added a new playable character, but didn't really add much to the package with it. These character switching moments just feel like padding because you end up retreating levels you already played, sometimes back to back, and it's really tedious. Probably the most notable change to the Sigma versions was the violence in Ninja Gaiden 2. The Xbox 360 version was a really violent game, and a big part of the gameplay involved chopping off limbs to weaken them or kill them instantly. For like gore hounds, it kind of sucks that the game was basically censored with Sigma 2, but that's not the only problem. That changed how the game was played. Like in general, there are fewer enemies that show up in Sigma 2 compared to the Xbox 360 version. And because of that, the levels seem even a little more empty than they were in the original. Certain people don't mind this stuff and prefer the less frenetic gameplay of Sigma 2, but you can see how it disappointed people that this is the version Team Ninja included in the collection, regardless of why. There actually was a version of Sigma 2 that gave you the option to turn on the gore. It was on the PS Vita. It was called Sigma 2 Plus, so the version that Team Ninja is using as a baseline for the collection isn't even the most feature-complete version of the game. There was likely some kind of a problem porting over features from the Vita version to the main game or something, so maybe it could have been difficult, but that doesn't make it not suck. All right, let's talk about issues with the PC version as well. I've held out talking about this enough. It's the one I'm playing for the review, and it is not great. In fact, I'd even say it's bad. It's outwardly bad. Probably the least of this port's problems is the fact that you're forced to use a controller. It doesn't have keyboard support at all. And while that's dumb, it does get way worse. First off, you have to manually set the output resolution. There's three options: 720p, 1080p, and 4K. And you have to set them as launch properties. Like, there's no resolution options in-game at any time. Like, you cannot change any settings on these things in-game at all. There really aren't any graphics settings either. They directly ported the console version to the PC, and that's it. So because of that, you actually have to expand the damn thing to full screen yourself. Like, it starts in a window, and you have to click on the tab to expand it to full screen. I can't remember that happening on any, like, large company's release at all in, like, at least a decade. At very least a decade. Even more ridiculous, there is no obvious way to exit the game. The first time I tried to exit, I couldn't even get it to turn off, and I literally Control-Alt-Deleted to get out of it. Like, they've never been the best at PC ports at Team Ninja, but this is next level bad. Like, they couldn't have made any changes to the games at all for PC. Like, to give it a little praise, actually playing the game, I don't have a whole lot of issues outside of some minor stuttering and weird loading that seems like it shouldn't be necessary anymore. But that's not the biggest deal. The quality of life is actually worse than running it on console, though, because you don't really feel the advantages to playing it on PC. So taking these issues into account, it's hard to recommend this collection, even to fans of the original games. Like, if you've got an Xbox, you can buy Ninja Gaiden Black for $10 off the Microsoft Store. It's Xbox One X enhanced, and it plays at 4K resolutions. Just do that. It's the best game out of the series. and it's the best version of the best game. It's not $40. This collection is $40. It's just not worth that, especially on PC. Maybe at a 50% or more discount, it might be a better value, but in its current state, it is not. Ninja Gaiden 1 and 2 are awesome games, and while bare bones, the games were stable for us. Like, there aren't any new visual glitches or bugs or crashes, which is good. It could be worse. At least it works properly, but it's just a shame about everything else involved with this collection. Console gamers, you might have an easier time than anyone on PC. I fully acknowledge that, but is it worth the $40? I don't think so. But what do you think? Leave us a comment. Let us know. If you like this video, click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week. Best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription, so click subscribe. Don't forget to enable all notifications, and as always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero. We'll see you next time right here on gameranx.